Do I think that is the right thing to do? Is that something that I want to go out and do? If I had a daughter, is that something that I would want her to be doing? Of course not. But I don't believe that the government should be making those decisions. All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody hit that like and subscribe. You know I would do it for you, and let's party. So, guys, I am so happy with this Culture War podcast. It's amazing. Even if you're not a fan of Tim Pool, the fact that he pretty much stays out of it, not stays out of it, but plays the moderator role. And the podcast is really about the guests and the topic, the actual cultural issue. It's not about, what's your take on this. It's very different, and it's perfect. It's perfect. This week, they did an episode about SEGZ work. The ladies of the night, the OF members, and that type of stuff. And then we have a conservative Christian woman talking about why it should or should not be. And then we have somebody who is in the industry. And I just have a small piece here.
Just first off, I would have to disagree that it's oldest profession. I feel like that would be a shepherd. Biblical characters were shepherds. They were selling the sheep. That was
lawyered. If you know where that reference is from, put it in the comments below, and I will be so happy.
Herding the sheep, that was kind of the oldest profession because the Bible is our oldest historical document. But I agree with you that it's not necessarily a debate about whether it's work or not. It's definitely a debate about, should this be allowed in society? Should our government, how should they legislate certain things like this? Does the government have a hand in morality? And I would absolutely say that laws are morality in a sense, where the government does have a huge hand in protecting the vulnerable, protecting the weakest members of society from evils.
Absolutely. Laws and government and all of politics is based on morality. What should we do? We should do this because. So you can't separate those things.
Like prostitution, like sex trafficking. And a lot of these women, there's this lie that the majority of prostitutes are at will and that they're doing it like OnlyFans. But 1%, according to data from the Nordic model now, only 1% of all women in prostitution are at will, which means 99% of prostitutes are forced into it by their pimps.
I would definitely have to double check on 99%. That feels like a large number. That feels like a rather large number, but I mean, hey.
So I don't think that I think we should do everything we can to end this industry and to get women into safer lines of work and to stop men's demand for sex because they don't have a right to other people's sexual organs.
I'm not so.
Now, I'm okay with the idea. I'm okay with two consenting adults wanting to do that. What I have more of an issue with is the cultural relevance, that it is such a thing that is like the desperation around it. Like she said, even if it's the second oldest profession, the fact is it's been around in human history forever. So it's not necessarily a sign that it's a terrible society, but the way that it's perceived and the way that it goes out into the world and the way people view it and look at it, that is all messed up.
You both said that it's work. I'm not so convinced in a certain context that it is, because it's clearly distinct from what we describe as work.
Yeah.
And even the fact that it is illegal today, in many contexts, I think, is it legal in Nevada? I don't know.
It's legalized in Nevada, and in Chicago they have the Nordic model.
They have specific laws about it, though. In Nevada, it's only in towns that have residents and less than 400,000 members, and it's only within brothels. So you can't be on the street prostituting yourself.
Yeah,
so basically, survival sex workers are still fined and left with, no option if they can't get into the brothels.
So really quick, I'm just gonna say, we have two women here. One of them is a wholesome, non-sex worker, and her. Now, don't judge a book by its cover, but if we're going to judge a book by its cover, which cover would you rather have?
They sort of work around it, I guess, because when you're in Vegas, you'll like come back to your hotel room and they push these cards under your door or whatever, and it's just like a bunch of scantily clad women on cards, and you're supposed to be like, ooh, which one will I pick or whatever.
Right.
And then, of course, they're doing like room calls and stuff. So I think everybody in Vegas knows it's illegal to do, but they all do it anyway.
Right.
But I guess my view is that, and we'll kick it off because I tweeted about this, and a bunch, I guess mostly sex positive, like pro-sex work leftists got really mad at me because I was seeing a lot of people say sex work is work. And so what I said was,
No, he probably didn't say that. That's mine.
Something like, if sex work was work, then a boss could require a female secretary to provide blowjobs as part of her job.
That makes sense. If it's work, then it's just another job. Why not, right?
That if it was the same thing as anything else, that if we were really just like, you know, you can hire a janitor, you can hire a sex worker, what's the difference? It's all work. Then a boss could create a job description and say, I need
Well,
someone
yeah,
to do
if
my
it is
laundry.
in the job description, I absolutely do agree that, yeah,
They could do that.
if that was part of their job and they agreed to it, it was in their job description, they have consented to it. So
So you don't see the issues with allowing bosses to say that in order to have this job, you have to perform sexual duties? You don't see that as different than the corporate world?
A
Right,
man
that's-
should be
that
allowed
is
to
sex
request
work.
that, though. Do you think an employer?
absolutely, I think men and women both, because actually half of my, well, not anymore because I'm retired, but half of my clients were women. So it is not just men.
But a man in a
Okay,
position, I
yeah.
think within what you're saying, so I would disagree that it was work. I was just agreeing that the conversation right now is not necessarily is it work or not. But to
Right, right.
speak on that point, I think it's work in the same way hiring a hitman is work, where you can hire anybody.
Great point. Great point. That is work, but it's not the same as working at Google.
I
for a
don't.
job.
I definitely don't think a victimless
don't-
situation is comparable to murdering.
I don't
somebody,
think
and that's-
prostitution is victimless at all. I think
I was going to say the exact same thing. It seems like a victimless crime because nobody is getting, directly injured in the process, unless, of course, they are, which is very common, and in which case, not victimless there. But even when it all goes to plan, it's not good for you. It's not good for your mentality if you're a woman. It's not good for your mentality if you're a man. That being said, I'm not willing to, I'm still in favor of decriminalizing it, but only if we can build up our culture to where we won't have to worry that, oh, now that it's legal, everyone's just going to go clamoring for it. That there's a small group of people who find that it's appropriate for them. And if they want to do it, they can go do it. And it's, sanctioned and legal and everybody is safe and all that stuff. But in order to get there, we have to have the culture of values where there's an element of shame to that. Otherwise, it's going to be exactly what you think of. Oh, everyone just whores running the streets and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want to live in that society. Again, I don't like the government being in control of what adults do with their body with consent. But it's a thin line. It's a thin line to try to straddle.
I think every single woman who involves themselves in prostitution is harmed, whether they want to admit it or not, psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Well, I mean, we could agree that
Mm-hmm.
with any job, you're definitely subject to some sort of mental and physical.
No. I mean, yeah, jobs are not fun, but going to work at a normal job is not necessarily going to cause all the types of issues that will necessarily come from doing this type of work. Try again.
I would disagree. I have a job. I love it. I've been working.
I mean,
in
I do
political
too.
There you go.
space.
I've been working in sex work for 10 years, and I've
But
also
I
been
don't-
studying.
But the point is that it's not about today. That's what I just said. It's not about you getting stabbed or paid or whatever. It's about what is it doing to your mind. And again, what is it doing? The outward appearance that you have definitely speaks to who you are and how you feel. And there's a certain kind of person who gets a face tattoo. Just saying.
Here for 10 years, and I'm doing pretty good myself. So
Well, I'm not at risk to be
independently
violently
wealthy.
attacked by a man.
Absolutely,
in my line of work.
absolutely. And here's
Well,
this is the argument.
But real quick, what if you worked at a nightclub?
At a night, well, I personally would never, because I think it's very important for women. I was raised like this. I think it's extremely important for women to go out of their way to protect themselves and keep an eye out for their safety. I spoke about Brian with this on the way here, that in college, I went to University of Maryland, just nearby. I would never be alone in a room with a man that I don't know. I would never go on a date with somebody that I had never met and just meet up with them.
Wow. A woman having accountability for herself. It's almost as if y'all all could be doing that. But instead, you choose to just push all that accountability aside. I'm fine right now, so probably good, right? Yeah, I don't know.
There's so many ways that women can just be attacked, trafficked, hurt. And so I take extra precaution to make sure that I'm never putting myself in a position to
Good on
be
you.
hurt. And I think prostitution actively puts a woman in the position to be taken advantage
Right.
of, to be hurt
Right.
in a way that professional jobs do not. They
And
have protections.
I
for
definitely
you.
don't disagree with you. So I want to make it clear that I absolutely do not encourage anybody under any circumstances to get into this industry.
Why? Why? If it's not bad, then what's the issue? If there's something you don't want people to do, there must be a reason you don't want them to do it. If that makes sense to you, you will definitely find a home at the Indian Jesus Discord server where the party never ends. That's right, 24/7 we're in there hanging out. And after every single live stream, we go in there for an after party where you're not stuck behind your keyboard, but you're actually on screen with me and everybody else. You can come if you want to. You don't have to. Either way, it is a good time. Come and join us.
Oh.
Right now, because
Interesting.
it is unsafe, and at least until it's decriminalized. Let's put it this way: at least until it's decriminalized, because that's where we start. When New Zealand decriminalized, and this is the gold standard, when New Zealand decriminalized sex work, this led to a immediate decrease in the amount of people partaking in consensual sex work. So even from a moral standpoint, if you
So I guess that seems counterintuitive, but without looking that up, I'll assume that, in the same way that any taboo is going to create a desire. In other countries, you don't have a lot of crazy drinking parties for 18-year-olds because the drinking age is lower. So, all right, we'll go with that.
want less people partaking in sex work, decriminalization is the only option. Legalization leads to more human trafficking. So that's obviously off the table.
So I wanted to go back to that point I was making about a boss having a job requirement. You said
Right.
if they consent to it, it's totally fine. But here's the question I have: Do men and women, and I think the trope is predominantly women, sleep with their male bosses in exchange for promotions?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do.
That happens
Just
anyways.
across, has that ever happened?
There's
Right.
no law on the books that will stop that. Government
True.
cannot legislate morality. It is not going to happen.
You can't legislate morality, but you certainly can try.
But it is taboo.
Quid pro quo.
Right.
And
And it should be. Quid
and-
pro quo should be. Like any sort of exploitation or coercion should be.
it should be.
Right.
Should be
Well,
what?
so
And it is.
Should be what?
not a lot, right?
Yes.
On
Okay,
that
should-
I
it
just
be
wanted to
frowned upon.
clarify
Yeah,
what-
She's not very articulate. And again, I'm not trying to take shots at her. I'm just saying it doesn't. I mean, as somebody who's been a drug addict, she kind of seems like she's on something.
Right.
The end of this
I'm
thought,
sorry.
yeah.
Yes, it should be frowned upon to
Okay.
coerce, exploit in any way, shape, or form. If somebody agrees to it as a consenting adult,
Well, but these
of course,
are.
I also believe that it should be 21 and up to get into any form of sex work. So.
But no, but if there's a female employee at a company and she does want to have sex with her boss and it does result in beneficial treatment and promotions, and they
then it's
consent.
not sex work.
I didn't say it was.
wasn't.
I'm just
Okay.
I'm asking about this. The first question is, do men and women sleep with their bosses for benefits? It does tend to be women, stereotypically, I suppose. The answer is yes, they do. People will sleep with their bosses in exchange for benefits and promotion. A lot of the time, it is consensual. The woman says, like, I'm gonna, this guy, I like my boss, whatever, and then it results in beneficial treatment. So the question that I have, and there's a reason why I don't think sex work is it's clearly an act carried out between two consenting adults. I should say it could be. In many contexts, two consenting adults say, "Hey, we're gonna hook up. We're gonna exchange money," and then they do their thing. They go about their separate ways.
Right.
That part I'm completely fine with. Not on a moral level, but on a legal level. We have to understand there's different levels. Do I think that is the right thing to do? Is that something that I want to go out and do? If I had a daughter, is that something that I would want her to be doing? Of course not. But I don't believe that the government should be making those decisions. That being said, there is because we don't have the strong cultural values that would create the taboo around it. And every 18-year-old, just as soon as their birthday, they sign up for OnlyFans. And because we don't have that, well, then we do have to, unfortunately, use legislation to corral people's morality, which is a bad thing.
I don't see why that. It's kind of shocking to me that that's illegal, in the sense that if a dude in a car pulled up to a woman and said, "Would you like to be my girlfriend? I'll take you out to dinner and give you an allowance to buy whatever you wanted." And she said, "Sure." and then they had sex, the difference between sex work is whether or not you decided it was a date or whether or not it was an exchange.
So that, and that makes perfect sense, which is exactly why I don't really feel like the government should be getting involved there. But there's something that needs to be done. It is not a good sign of a flourishing society that we go backwards. And I personally view an increase of the number of women doing this type of work as going backwards. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but that's not a good sign.
So, but we'll come back to that. Here's my point. I believe that if we legalized sex work to the extent that it was treated like any other job, so a boss could say, I'm hiring a secretary. I need my mail retrieved. I'm going to need phone calls answered, and I'm going to need sex acts performed on me. If that was allowed, then you will have, there may be a social stigma at first, but market competition will dictate that for women, guys are going to be demanding it.
Yep. And then once one company starts, then, hey, if I could do it, then they all do it. Then we all work together. Hey, men, nobody hire any women unless they're, you don't have to do it. We just put it in the contract. Don't hire any women. And now all the men stick together. And now there are no jobs at all where performing sexual acts is not part of your job description.
And that you would have to provide that, because if in a world, if that were to
you
happen,
don't have to, but if you don't, you'll get fired and find
Yeah.
another job.
You won't get hired at all.
you won't get hired because some other girl, if you're saying I'm unwilling to do that, it's very easy for the boss to just say, okay, I'll find somebody who will.
Yep.
Find somebody who will. And then again, where do you go after that? Like Tim said, there'll be a stigma for a while. It's not overnight. Everybody's going to have these rules, but men are men. Men are men. And you can't, she said it herself, you cannot legislate this.
Right. And then it's very easy for that employee to go to somebody who doesn't demand it.
But
No, that's not how it works. That's not how the market works. This is a problem with people who understand their field and taking that understanding, taking that competency and extending it to places where you don't have that competency. You don't understand how the market works. So what you're saying is just cope. You're just trying to justify mentally what you do and this kind of work. And again, I don't think it should be illegal. If you want to go and do it, go and do it. But you're already saying that you don't want young girls to do it. Why is that?
If men are allowed to demand it, I think that if you're allowed to get away with bad things, more people try to. I think that's just the way human nature is. Humans are not designed good by default. God designed us.
Designed well. Superman does good. You do well.
Not to be good by default, because you have to actively choose good to be a good person and get rewarded for the afterlife. So I think human nature defaults to wanting what's bad for us, essentially.
I don't think it's a want. I think it's a need. That's what survival sex work is. When it comes down to it, most people that are partaking in it are survival sex workers. So we can't forget about
I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to accept that you have to do this specific thing. There are so many other things that you can do. We live in a gig economy. You don't need a car. You don't need a computer. You could make a living off of your phone, obviously. But I'm saying, and not putting all your bits out there. So no. Definitely not. So definitely go check out the rest of the episode. I thought it was, I didn't see the whole thing yet, but I saw this clip and I definitely wanted to share it with you guys. I think it's very interesting. What do you guys think about, the laws around this stuff? Do you think it should be legal? Do you think it should be decriminalized? Do you think it should be more about like the pimps and the Johns rather than the women? What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Once again, I have been your host, Lech, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, I am out of here. Peace.